Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend, partner, and runner-up in the 2002 Mobile Phone Throwing World Championships, known to many as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world. My friend, my buddy, my partner in crime, Wes Brown.
Todd, how you doing, my friend? Oh my God. How did you find that?
You know, I had to really dig deep this week to find this one because I was like, I know there's something out there that we have not talked about that is not on Wes's, regular resume of wild and crazy things that he's done. But once again, I did my research and I came up with this, this other event that you had participated in. Once again, we're talking about the country of Finland.
Yeah, Finland. Yep. Let me see. I remember that was pretty close to the same time when I was doing that cliff diving stuff, and
death diving stuff.
Death diving. Yep. That's so if you tuned into that, so Finland, these Scandinavian countries, they do all sorts of really fun things, and that was a hoot, and just kind of happened upon it. Once again, these things just kind of happen driving down the road, and there's a big crowd of people, and hey, why not? And then I threw myself into it, and so it was quite the experience.
So you're like looking over while you're driving, and you're like, you see cell phones like flying through the air, and you think like, what the hell?
Right. At first I thought it was some kind of falconry thing. They were throwing things for falcons to come down and swoop, because, they do that kind of stuff in, Saudi Arabia and everything. And I'm sure that's another adventure that we'll talk about at another time. But I saw that and I was like, what is going on over there? And there's a bunch of people on it. There's people I want to just join in, right? Because that's who I am. And just showed up and there we go.
And again, you're at the advent of a new sport. The sport started in 2000. And here you are in 2002 at the beginnings of this sport, and you take second place. That's pretty awesome.
And that's the sad thing is I never quite win,
I know, but you know what? I mean, it sounded like this Petri Volta guy that won it that year, gave you a good run to your money. You were close, man. I mean, he threw a distance of 66.72 meters. And for those of you that grew up in the U.S. and never learned the metric system, that's a little under 219 feet. And you had a throw of 65.48 meters, and that's a little under 215 feet. So you missed it by like 4 feet, man.
Yeah, and so little do you know is I went first. I was before him, and with that throw, I knew I had it. I was just like, got all cocky. I was like, finally, I win something. I'm not last or second or don't finish. I finally win something. And then he comes out and does that amazing. I think he was just like, not in my country, and did it. So kudos to him. What was his name again?
Petri Volta. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Yeah.
Anyway,
and what's interesting about this sport is it's a one and done. You get one throw and then you're done. And they have like different categories, but they have like a freestyle category. But what we're talking about is the original. You're just stepping up over the shoulder throw as far as you can do it, and then it's done. Yeah. And then you're off to drink vodka.
Nice. My my drink of choice. Anyway, well, that was fun. Anyway. Yeah, I love it.
I love taking you down memory lane.
Yes.
You're so nostalgic.
I am. Well, thanks for that one, Todd. And Petri, good job. Way to go.
You should write him.
I should. Do you have his address by chance?
Yeah, I'll get it to you after the podcast.
All right. Sounds good. We'll drop.
All right. Let's talk art because our guest is about ready to just like bail on us. She's like looking at us like, oh God, what did I get myself into?
I wanted to know if it was a flip phone that you threw.
Well, yes. back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And the antenna that expands.
Right.
I mean, if it was a brick or if it was a flip phone, that, could have made the difference.
Right. I think in 2002, it might've been my BlackBerry. Mm-hmm. And there were some pictures that, thank God, hopefully nobody's picked up that phone, and I'll probably get some male now, but there was some pictures on there from a drunk fest a few years earlier. So hopefully nobody got that SIM card. But
all right, let's talk art.
Let's do it.
People just logged off right now. Like, oh my God, this week they're doing this thing again. Holy shit. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on our Tenant Podcast Facebook page and our Instagram at Tenant Podcast. And of course, check out our website, tenantpodcast.com. We're excited to talk with our next guest. Her work is exquisitely beautiful. She is an interdisciplinary artist based here in Denver, Colorado, currently working in wood and mixed media sculpture and printmaking. Welcome to the program, Autumn T. Thomas.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
How you doing tonight, Autumn?
I'm pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's like a month and a few days into just like full-time artistry. So I'm good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's awesome. And where were we at a couple weeks ago, Todd, that we seen some of her work? Oh, Redline. We were at Redline. And my wife just fell in love with one of your pieces. So yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. So I'm excited to talk to you about it tonight because it's a little different than what we've been talking about previously. So a little different spin on it. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm going to direct all of our listeners to Autumn's website. It's atthomas.com, atthomas.com. And her Instagram is at Seasons of Autumn. Start off by talking about your work and these mediums that you really are concentrating on right now.
So I work exclusively with Paduc wood. So it's an African exotic hardwood. And what I do is essentially put curve cuts into the wood that allows it to become flexible and bendy. And then I make shapes out of them, out of that wood, and I fill it with resin so that the wood holds that shape. And those shapes come to represent essentially like non-expressible feelings or things that are happening, right? Whether they're, emotions or words, things that I can't articulate or experiences that, need one word, but there isn't one word that exists. It's more of a look or, an expression. And so I create abstract wood sculptures. And, people ask all the time, like, how did I get into this? And, people are like, well, I thought you were a printmaker. And like, I am. I'm trained as a printmaker, but I also make other stuff too. And I think I've found that this particular medium, I think especially the hardwood, it just feels right in my body, right? And there's something about the tactile nature and the making and the like being able to get dirty and the sort of like limitless of this limited material, right? That I am in love with. And there's this sort of like ancestry that, it just kind of calls to me. It's called like, there's a Yoruban concept called Ashe, right? And it's like the essence of art or the essence of a thing that like reaches into me and says, hey, this is what I want to be. I want to be this. And then it's my job to kind of like convey that, right? And to be the conduit of that, right? It just feels good to me. So that's what I'm doing. And, I started out small. Like the idea started with, so I'll take a step back. These sculptures started as a way to kind of create a base for printmaking, right? So I had this idea where I would take, and I actually did a piece, my graduate thesis artwork was this like lenticular large scale printmaking piece that was cut up into slices. So if you imagine like a really, really big print that's cut up into strips, right? And then each strip is sort of like set at an angle so that you can only see it at a particular, like if you look at the entire piece, you can only see it at a certain angle. And a really good way to think about it is, those stickers that you would get from like there was this like kids like snack that you would get, right? And there was
like Cracker Jacks kind of thing?
Cracker Jacks, yes, thank you. There was always a sticker in the box that you would get and you would like open it. And so if you like tilt the picture from one side to the next, the picture would like change images That's lenticular printing, right? So I just like blew that idea up into this large scale piece. And I fell in love with it. Like I still love the idea of it. But I wanted to kind of use the structure. So that white piece that you're looking at in the image, that's the structure. But I wanted the structure to become more fluid and like for it to have more movement. And so I essentially started creating these wood pieces, but the pieces became so much more interesting that I just like tossed printmaking to the side for a little while. And it's like, I was going to make these. These are just like, they don't need anymore, right? So that's how I got into these wood sculptures. And for me, like, I feel like they're limitless. There's so many things that I want to do with them that it's just like, I'm just going to do this until I fall apart, you know?
And this piece is really beautiful. What's the name of this piece?
So I actually don't remember. So there were two pieces to this. And I can kind of talk about my graduate thesis, which will make a little bit more sense than telling you the title of it. Does that work for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So my whole concept was, and still kind of is, visual literacy, right? And so I feel like most times when we see something straight on, we look at it and we want to have all the information and we want to have it and know it. And then we want to walk away, right? We want to do that all in 20 seconds. And I think especially my experience in grad school and just like in academia in itself, like I was so frustrated with people seeing me and having the assumption that this is what I'm going to do. So instead, I just wanted to force people to have to interact with a 2D object. And like my grad school experience was, one side of it was printmaking and the other side was book arts. So the entire program was called book arts and printmaking. So there was a 2D element, but there was also a 3D element. And I just really struggled because, I felt like printmaking was this like way to present images in ways that you manipulate them, right? And you make them what you want, but it wasn't fulfilling me in ways that my art wanted to. Like it was a little limiting. So this piece was a way for me to kind of make it a 3D or make it exist in the round and make someone interact with it in a way that you really can't interact with printmaking. And so that was one half of it. And the other half, which I'll have to send you some images. The other side of this like kind of install was a vinyl piece that was installed on the wall, and very reminiscent of whose name I'm missing. I'm losing her name right now, but one of the Hidden Figures women who was in NASA, right? So she created this like the way that astronauts would essentially learn how to get out of space and come back to Earth, right? So there's a whole mathematical equation, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that much about it, but there was one image that really stood out to me in that there's a particular way that you have to look at something to be able to understand it. And so that image was put on the wall in vinyl, and you could see that image in a whole if you stand to the side of this hanging sculpture, right? But if you're standing at that angle to see that in the clear, then this image you couldn't see in the clear. So then you had to like shift your entire body. You had to walk around the piece in order to see this image in full, but you couldn't see the rest of it in full. My thesis was you have to interact with a thing in order to get the full view of it. And so full circle now, right? I've taken out the printmaking because I don't really want to, there's a certain way that when you make work and you present it as a flat object, for me, I feel like I'm making it easy. And my work, like it's so layered, there's no easy in it when it comes to trying to understand it. And so it just felt limiting in that like, I cannot put the idea on this flat paper, print it, make 100 of them, and then disseminate them in ways that will make you really understand the work. Because you have to get it, you literally have to be able to get into it.
It looks like a photogram.
It is. Yeah.
It is a photogram?
Well, it's so, again, multi-layered, right? So the paper is handmade paper. It's a sisal fiber, which is in the family of like hemp. It's like a hemp fiber. So handmade paper. And then the color was printed with a Van Dyke brown. So it's a, non-traditional like print photography technique. So same kind of exposure, just like a different chemical. And the imagery that you're seeing is basically like, it's me kind of leaning back and like in this pose with my hands behind my head. And I'm like in this like leaning back kind of phase. And the photograph, I chose to use this photograph of myself because again, like there's the gaze that I was experiencing, particularly in grad school, and people seeing me and like feeling like grad school's hard, right? There are all kinds of things that I experienced and didn't want to experience and had to learn through and go through, but super vulnerable. And I felt like I was in this space of like really kind of just trying to give my all and trying to be as vulnerable as possible while also learning. And I felt like super unsafe because of the response that I was getting from the people that were like placing their gaze upon me, right? So I was being forced into these boxes that I didn't want to be in. And so I use this like vulnerable pose of myself. And it's a nude photo that you can't really tell, but this like vulnerable position. And then I made it super ultra large scale. And then I took the power back. Right. And so I essentially am like forcing one myself, but I'm taking the power and making myself like, just like putting myself on this large scale and then forcing you to interact with me as opposed to me, like always feeling like I have to respond to the way that people are interacting with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was just like really kind of like taking my power back, forcing you to walk around and experience this as a whole. Like I'm actually forcing you to try to understand in a way that you are not willing to.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful piece.
Thank you. It was a lot of work. It was hard. I love that. I love that piece very much. What's kind of difficult is that I don't really have the chance to show it because most opportunities that you apply for, they don't want work that was completed in school. And this was completed in school, even if it was my graduate thesis work. So I don't show it. I mean, maybe I'll make something similar or like remake something similar at a point, which was how I started this whole process. And so maybe, 5-10 years down the road, we'll come back to this point with the structure having been refined and like worked through and, yeah.
How big is this piece?
Yeah. I was going to ask that question too.
Yeah, it is. It's about 63 wide by, I think it's 60 tall. So if you were to, hang it in the gallery, like measurements, your head would probably be toward the bottom middle of the piece. So it hangs pretty high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I'd love to see the piece in person because it looks absolutely fascinating. I think it's absolutely brilliant the way you were thinking about this and then how you presented it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for people that want to check it out, you go to Autumn's website, go down under work, click on the print tab, and it'll pop right up. You'll see it. There's an actual picture of you. I saw you standing in it. So you kind of get a sense of the scale of how large it is.
I have a YouTube video of you like walking around the piece so that you can kind of see what it looks like to experience it in the round.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack just a little bit because you said a word that I'd never heard before, and I'm going to butcher it now. Ashe, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that? Is that something you can elaborate on?
Sure.
You said it was the essence of art, but I'd never heard that term, and it just kind of spiked my interest.
Well, I interpret it as the essence of art, but it's the essence, it's the soul, essentially. And so, I mean, there's so many ways. Like I usually speak in some, I like to make metaphors. And so it's like if you're standing in the dark somewhere. I'm originally from Ohio, so like there are fireflies in Ohio, right? And so imagine you're just standing in like a forest in the dark, right? And a firefly blinks, but you see it, but you don't know where you saw it because it's like half a second long. And so then you look and then you try to find it again. That's like the feeling of Ashe, right? And so there's a certain sense of like the work kind of calls to be made as if it's just like blinking and you're like, oh my God, it's right there, but it's fleeting. and now it's over here. And so there's a moment where it just like comes into you. And then now you have to figure out how to make it. And that's the language barrier between, at least for me, like the language barrier between art and making of the art, right? Because it's all in here. And like, I can tell you, if I could like articulate the language and you understood the language, we could have a dialogue. We can just sit here and like art back and forth, but that's not a thing. But that's why I'm an artist, right? And so this is my communication. This is the way that I am communicating with the world. And what's frustrating is that people aren't listening, or people want you to say one word when actually what I need is not words. What I need is you to stand here and be quiet, right? And so that's the Ashe, like it's the stuff, but there's no word for it other than the Ashe or the Ase. Sometimes it's spelled ASHE with an, with an apostrophe, or also ASE. But yeah, it's the soul.
That's fascinating. And I have to tell you, Autumn, I'm loving this conversation because you're bringing something that I'm totally unfamiliar with, and you're making me think, and you're giving me something to really kind of process. So I know in the next few weeks, I'm going to be going down this rabbit hole of what this means and looking at, so thank you so much, because I'm having an absolute ball tonight. Yeah, this is amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, we can talk. I mean, if you look up Yoruba, just Yoruba, right? And there are tons of, I don't want to say tons, but there's a lot of inspiration that I gain from just like a different culture, right? And I don't want to say that I'm not like 1,000% familiar. I do have someone who I'm inspired by like 1,000%, and she taught and teaches currently just like the art practices and Yoruban practices. And so I was like really inspired and touched by, and I'm sure that some of my ancestors are Yoruban. And so, yeah. And it makes sense to me, it feels good to know that at least like there are things that I'm doing that I can't say that, I mean, it's ancestry, and there are things that I do that I know are not of my control. It's my ancestors. Right.
That's so cool. That is absolutely so cool.
Yeah. It's actually, you feel like it's just embedded in your DNA, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I have to do it. Like it's what it is. I have to do it.
It's beautiful the way you just laid that out for us. So thank you. So I want to go back, kind of circle back to our conversation about this piece and your experience in grad school. So how were people perceiving you as a person that you felt like you had to process this through your art? Like people thought that you should be producing like certain types of art, or touch on that just a little bit? Because I would think that when you're going to an art school, right, and you're doing a graduate program, that people would be pretty, I don't know, open-minded or progressive in their thought, or, they're not there to judge, right? Like you're all artists, like working towards this goal. And, and I know from going to art school that you kind of, you gravitate towards certain people, and you kind of find your people when you're there that are your support base or your support group. Was that your experience, or did you have a different experience?
Oh man. I mean, to a degree that was my experience, but that's very loaded. There's one very particular experience that I remember very vividly, where I think it was the first semester, and, printmaking 01, right? And we had a really, really hard critique with the program director. And it was brutal. And we had a talk after that, and she wanted to know like why I made what I made. And she like totally broke it down. And I said, this is printmaking 1. So of course I'm not going to have, like, I've got 6 classes, right? 3 of them are theory, right? And the other 3 are studio. So there's no way that I'm, and I don't know what I want to do yet. Right. And so she's like, well, you can start with slavery. And I'm like, well, why would I do that? And she's like, well, you don't have to have somewhere to start. And I'm like, no, because I'm a Black person doesn't mean that I start my research with slavery. But that's what I know now. Like I've learned since beginning that program was that's why I was brought in, because I was a Black person, and I was a Black person in the program to be Black, to be the Black person. So her response and, her expectation was that I would research, the beginnings of her ideals of what it meant for me to be Black, which was slavery. And it was so hard. It was really, really hard. And a lot of that was really me kind of like figuring out how to stand on my own 2 feet. And I don't want to say that that I went against the expectation, but I did, and I had to also kind of come to terms with, wanting to kind of like subvert the expectation. And then at the end of my graduate thesis, having arrived at the same expectation, right? Because there was a lot of that, but that's what my experience was. So it was tough. And I had support, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the kind of contention came from one person, but that one person had all the control.
Wow.
So it made it really, it was hard. Like grad school is hard.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't have a master's, but, I know from talking to other people that it is a really difficult thing to go through, and they really do like break everything down. It sounds like, in talking with another person that's currently going through an M.F.A program, she was describing it as far as like all of a sudden, everything that you were doing previous and you were kind of feeling good about what you were doing as an artist, when you get there, that gets all kind of torn down. And then on top of this, you have this person that has these like ideas that they're putting on you that, are not necessarily, something that you have in your head. Like you're exploring your own self as an artist, as a person, or what have you, but they're putting these things on you, right? Like it just seems fucked up.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so,
yeah. No, and to share, like I had a lot of support. And I'm trying to, I think that person is no longer the director of the program. So a little less sticky. But it was really that person that all of my support team also had to fight that person. So, you know what I mean? So but there was a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
So we talked to another lady who's actually doing her MFA in Frankfurt, Germany, and her experience in the American system was the same thing. It's like she hit a wall, and she felt like they treated her like she didn't deserve to be there. Like you said, a master's program is hard enough anyway, and then you add this added pressure, undue pressure. Who in the hell are you to tell me what I should be exploring in my own art journey, right? And I just don't understand that, but yeah, people egos, right?
Yeah.
And so she ended up leaving the country and going someplace else where she felt free enough to express her own way, so this is another example of where I think is just bad education in my view. So
yeah, I mean, I want to be fair, because my alma mater was not a bad institution. And I loved a lot of that program. Like I stayed because I was in love with what I was doing and making and a lot of the learning. And I really honestly kind of committed to being anti the program director, right? But that also, I had to come to that. There are a lot of tears and, but I don't want to give more credit to like the educational system than it deserves also, because I think that that's one half of it. You also have to show up and you have to kind of get the information that you want and that you need. And so that was, the space was there and the contacts were there and the networking and, the visiting artists, like all of those, like all of that was there. The rest was up to me to kind of like dig and figure out what I wanted to get from that. So that's the other half of that, right? But it doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Right. And it shouldn't be easy, but because you're exploring something, especially with an MFA, you're exploring something that's beyond what you've been experienced to, like, you're really like taking it to the next level, so to speak. And same with my master's. It was brutal enough that because I had a lot of reading in a short period of time, and then you writing every week over a certain subject. And that's what was hard. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, you never felt like you ever got caught up. You were just like swimming in material. My master's in strategic leadership. So, so it's, it was all, mental stuff, and, just, so I totally understand where you're coming from. But then you have somebody that makes it even harder for you. I didn't have that experience. All the instructors were very supportive. Not that they weren't hard, but they were supportive. But to have that on top of doing it, I'm glad you stuck it out. I'm glad you came out the other end, Yeah,
no, thank you. Me too. Yeah.
So going through this, I mean, I would have been just like you. I've been like, all right, that's it. Game on. Like, you're this is what you're doing. And this is the way that we have to interact with each other. There would have been pushback all the time against this person. I mean, both guns loaded, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
And to do that, you have to produce the work, right? Like, you have to, that's the way that you're able to negotiate the system that's in place, and this person that has all the power. Like you said, the way you do it is you got to produce fantastic work and show them that, hey, I belong here and I have a right to be here, and I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And I think the part that there's the other side that's like, you have to be willing to stand up to someone. That's not always about the work, because I made some crappy work, or I had to, right? And I still will. The part about that is, it was essentially an abusive relationship, right? With not just me, there were other students too that were having the same kind of similar experience, but there's a way that you have to learn how to, can I cuss?
Yeah. By all means.
You have to learn how to say, fuck you, I'm right. And I may have done it incorrectly, and I'll learn from that, but there's a certain like self kind of preservation that you get out of learning how to ignore someone or let someone be wrong or tell someone, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway. That's what made it so much harder, because the work is going to come. Like, I'm paying to be here, or kind of, I got paid to be there partially, but the work is going to happen. It's more just like, don't let your soul be broken while making it, or don't change your process or your idea in order to get it made. Right. So staying with your own idea while someone is anti your idea, that's what's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting experience to have to go through. And, it makes you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, they say, right? So, yeah, good for you for sticking it out. And God, you're going to run up against those people all the time. And especially in art school, I mean, there's always those instructors that you're like, oh my God, I just like, they have their own ideas. And sometimes, I mean, that's the bad part of like being part of going to art school, is that they want you to kind of think in this certain way, and sometimes that really messes with people. Like, it can really break people,
It can.
And for everybody like you guys, where you're like two fingers up and guns loaded, right? There's other people like, and I don't know if I might crumble and just say, maybe I don't have the talent and I'm out, and it's unfair, because I don't think that's necessary. That kind of critique, it's great to get good quality critique, like, what is wrong with this piece in your view, and how can I make it better? But when they're, trying to like direct you, is like, you need to explore your, slave heritage. It's like, what the fuck is that about? God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, that shit frustrates me. So, but thanks for sharing, because that, I think that's a story, and I always come back and, and we talked to Talia about this. It's like, there's somebody out there that needs to hear this. And this might be the difference of like, I'm thinking about dropping out of my program. And then they, this is putting a lot of like headiness on us, but I think then sometimes the universe will give them something, and maybe it's this, maybe it's what you're telling us and our listeners that could be a difference. So I always think somebody needs it. And I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah, I'm too. And it's helpful for me to talk about it too, because I still have PTSD. So, if I can just like encourage anyone to do a thing, I'm happy to do that, or not do a thing, right? Because it's not always for everyone. I don't think that grad school is for everyone. I don't think it's 100% necessary for everyone, right? I went to grad school because honestly, so can we just like jump into?
Yeah.
So I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college right out of high school, right? Well, I kind of did. I've gone to college a lot of times, but never actually started and completed for a lot of time, right? So tried college, didn't work out, came back home, went to the military. So I was in the military, tried college in the military, wasn't my time. So I came back home. Then I tried to start a business. So I had this business of painting wine glasses. And, it was awesome. I really like it. I'm drinking out of a wine glass that I painted now. And I decided that, I need some business acumen. And so I went to Community College of Aurora, CCA, for business. And I ended up meeting, I took a painting class, which was like an elective. I met Sue Gibbons, who was my instructor at the time. She's an awesome artist. And something clicked in me. And I was like, why am I not being an artist? Like, I've been an artist literally since I was born. That's all I remember. But I spent my whole life doing other things that I think I thought I was supposed to do. So I got to, took this painting class, and my whole everything switched. So then I had I took more painting classes. That's what happened. Took some drawing classes. And then I had this online class. It was a psychology class. Dr. Linda Bradford, who I will love her until the day I die. She, for whatever reason, I don't remember why, but she told me in an email that she was going to Chicago and she was going to visit the School of the Art Institute. And in my mind, I'm like, why? Okay, well, yeah, tell me about it when you come back. And she came back and she I think she sent me a brochure. It was like an online brochure or something. And, a year later I had enrolled and I was going to art school. Right. And so I think at that point I was 29. It took me all of those years to actually embrace doing the thing that I was supposed to do. So, and I might be wrong on the age now, I forget. But I went so I did undergrad, transferred, I did 3 years in Chicago, School of the Art Institute. And at that point, I was so hungry for all the things that I'd missed because I felt like I had to catch up as an adult artist. And so I went directly to grad school after that, which was right for me. But I also felt like I didn't want to lose, I was going to lose studio and free access to time, and making. And I just was like, I'm not ready yet, so that's why I went to grad school. But that doesn't have to be everyone's road. It was just right for me. But I also went with other things in mind. I didn't go to grad school thinking I have to do this because this is what I need on my resume and my CV. And this is why I just wanted to learn more. And it was time for me. Right. Yeah.
Where'd you go to grad school at?
I went to University of the Arts in Philadelphia.
How was that experience other than what did you like going from Chicago to Philadelphia? I did.
Yeah. I could have stayed in Chicago to do grad school, but there was a feeling of I finished in Chicago. I was done in Chicago. I'd moved here to go there. And then now it was time to do something else. So yeah, I'm still glad that I made that decision. Chicago's amazing, but I was done,
Yeah.
Philly, I didn't get to explore Philly that much because grad school's hard. But I loved what I learned. I loved what I was doing. I met some amazing people and support systems, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that because, if there's one thing we've learned from this podcast is that everybody does this art thing different, and it all just depends on the person and, what they feel. And I think a lot of times, I was very much like yourself. Like I graduated high school and I didn't really, I stopped and started college a couple times and I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. And I think if you're a young person, that's quite all right. It's like, all right to go, explore some different things. And if it doesn't work out, no big deal. You'll figure it out. And it's not failure. Those are just learning experiences. You take what worked and what didn't work, and then you move on to the next thing. And the fortunate thing is that you actually found something that really grabbed you and that you were passionate about. I mean, some people spend their entire lives searching for that thing and they never find it. They're, 65, 70 years old and they feel like they've never found that thing. So the fact that you were able to find it, you hit the lottery, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I take that for granted sometimes, but yeah.
Well, I think it's always easier to take things for granted to look at it from those experiences that maybe weren't that great and not really think about where you're at and your ability to have the things that you have as an artist. One of those things being, some being autonomous and freedom, right? But the flip side of that coin is, you got to wear all these other hats that, that they don't necessarily talk about when you're going through an art program, right?
Right. Yeah.
The business things that you're like, oh, son of a gun. But you were smart. I mean, you got some college coursework in business. So I got to ask you, because we ask this a lot for people that have actually gone on and gone to art school and been like an M.F.A. Do you feel like the programs that you went through, did you get much business stuff? Did they set you up for success as far as the business side of art?
No. No, I mean, no.
So that was pretty much all you like just figuring it out and maybe some of these business courses that you'd taken previous.
Yeah. I read a lot of books. And there's a certain amount of like, I don't like for there to be a thing that I will try anything. I honestly believe that I can do anything, right? And I think we all can, right? But there is no thing that I will like approach with hesitation in that I can't do it. I might have to learn how to do it, or I might have to, read a bunch of books or make a bunch of mistakes. And so that's kind of the attitude that I had, especially with, the first business that I tried. And it could have been good. I just couldn't, there were things that I didn't know. But I had already tried it to learn that I didn't know the things, right? So that's kind of my process. But yeah, I don't think that, there were probably two classes that I've taken that were kind of like around business kind of stuff. So like I took a gallery running class, which is like how to run a gallery. And then there's some like atelier classes on like how to be a studio assistant, that kind of thing, but no actual business classes. No. It's unfortunate. I could use that now.
I think every artist can, and especially if you're of a certain age. And we've talked to some people on the podcast that are trying to change those things, that are trying to have that conversation with art schools. Like, hey, you're pumping these kids out, and they got this great foundation about how to make things, how to be masters of their craft, but at the same time, you're kind of setting them up for failure because you're not giving them the business acumen that they should have to be successful out there in the real world. And if you're an artist, you got to have that thing, and you got to have that hustle. What I admire are people like yourself that and I know that everybody has fear, but you don't have that fear of like trying something new and it not working out. Where does that come from? Is that something you always had?
One of the like major things that my mom taught me was that I can do anything. So that is at the base of my existence, right? So there's that. And then the other side, I think maybe it's, my upbringing. It was honestly me and my mom. So it's just she and I. So I saw her do things that normally like the father would do in the family, right? So whether it's like getting the car fixed or fixing the plumbing, or, you know, like these like random life kind of maintenance things that all my friends and their families, the dad would be doing. My mom did everything. So I think what I got from that was that I can do everything. Right. And so I didn't have this sense of like dependence on someone else, namely like a man, to do something. It was all me, because like, and I'm an only child. So honestly, it's me. So there's no, and you know, this can be good sometimes, and other times it can be to my detriment. I'm not good at asking for help. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just like this, it's a learned behavior that I can do whatever it is I need to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That in itself is spectacular. I mean, your mom was self-reliant. She taught you how to be self-reliant and not have to depend on other people. Like, hey, if you got to get this done, you got to figure it out. Right.
Just got to do it. I mean,
yeah. And that's spectacular. And the fact that, you know, she told you that you could do anything that you wanted to do. And I think that's so important to tell kids, that to give them that foundation to engage with them and inspire them to like, hey, follow your dreams and you can do this, but you have to work hard. Right. And you have to, you're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think we mess kids up so much in that even in our own fears, even if, and I don't have kids, so it's easy for me to say that, like 100%, I'll acknowledge that. But even when we think about like telling kids, don't run or you'll trip, or don't play with that, or don't play with this. And obviously, like you don't want them to touch fire because it's hot, right? There are things that make sense. But there are ways that we train kids to be careful, or to watch out for this or watch out for that, that is like stifling the, I guess, like the imagination of kids. And if, I don't know, it's kind of sad to me, but there are things that I think that if we just continue to tell kids, like, you can do anything. Now, with that, you have to go through the things that it takes to be able to do that, i.e. you have to learn how to do it, or you have to use safety precautions, or you have to go to sleep at night, right? So there are caveats to being able to do things that you want to do, but you can do it. It's possible. It might suck, but you can do it, you know, or you might, I mean, if we're being honest, you can touch a hot stove. You're going to burn the shit out of your finger. You can do it. Now, do you want to burn your finger? If no, then you don't want to touch the stove, but you can totally touch the stove, right? And I'm not saying, like, I'm not advocating for that, like, way of training, but that's the thought process.
Right. And I was just thinking, you know, when you were saying this and when Todd was saying it, you know, we give a lot of lip service in the American way of life, right? That you can be whatever you want to be. You can be president, you can be an astronaut, but there are limitations. But the thing is I think anybody can be anything they want to be, but we also have to not just give lip service, but then show them how to be anything you want to be. And I think a lot of times we fall short of that. You know, I told them they can be whatever they want, and then they're not doing anything. And it's just like, well, yeah, but you gotta, you know, and part of it is, and I'm not, I guess, articulating this very well, but some of it is just like teaching them how to be prepared and produce, right? To go back to Ed Dwight, you got to prepare for whatever you're going to do, and then you got to produce at the other end of it. Yeah. And if you have a shortcoming, you got to produce, you know, even more or further or better than your competition, you know, to rise above that.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
What's that?
No, I'm really glad you said that, because it takes everything. And I think that, yeah, I mean, there's the also the other side, to your point, the other side of the conversation where, you know, you hear people say, well, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and like, you should do that too, and just like figure it out. Not so much, you know, because there is a certain amount of, like, we use your example, like wanting to be an astronaut, right? And let's say I'm 43, which I am. Do I want to be an astronaut? No. But if I wanted to, could I be an astronaut? Sure. But in ways that aren't necessarily NASA astronaut, right? So we also have to take our like allow ourselves to kind of like broaden our definitions of things, right? So let's say I want to be, I don't know, like I want to be a coder. There are myriad ways that in which I can be a coder. It doesn't have to be a coder for Google or for Apple or for, name another tech company in California, right? So that's what I'm saying. And they're like, you can be anything, but you also have to like allow your brain to get out of the box that says you have to do doctor or architect or lawyer or artist, right? So that's the anything kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's right on point.
So you talked about earlier, you alluded to it, that you were pretty much engaged with art your entire life, even as a child.
Yeah. I knew as a kid, one of my first memories is actually like tribute to my mom. She was an artist, is an artist. She's still alive. She's not practicing, right? So that's why I say was. But she would carve these like wooden plaques. I remember very distinctly this one that's in my memory. It was like praying hands. So, she was carving wood, or she would do like glass, like mirror art, where she would like carve into the back of a mirror, the gray stuff, the back of glass that makes it a mirror. She would like carve into that. So then there would be a picture on the front, Yeah. I mean, I did a book. I think I was in kindergarten, where like made this book, which was funny because then I went to study, artist books 40 years later. But I made this book and I won some contest. So I got to be on the news with Ronaldo Mused. I don't know if anyone remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. She interviewed me about my book. So yeah, I've always 100% wanted to be an artist. Like, yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So she was doing like these relief carvings. Is that what she was doing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And where did that skill set come from? Is that something she just picked up on her own, or she had another person or a family member that, kind of turned her on to that?
Who knows? It was a thing she did. I mean, she wanted to be an artist before I was born. And, things were different in, as I was born in the 70s, 80s, 78. Things were different. And, it wasn't as easy to say, I want to be an artist. I want to go to art school and then have your parents like co-sign that. So she wasn't allowed to go to art school. And so it's like, I'm also kind of like living her dream, which is sad. And also I'm proud. Right. So it's like both of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's probably proud of you, even though, maybe living a little vicariously through you, watching you do wood stuff, right?
Yeah.
That when you said she carved in wood, it was just like, oh my God, how is that like not connected to you, right?
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
It's cool. It is cool. Yeah.
What was like the first thing that you did outside of the apparatus that you're using to hang this big print? What was the first thing that you made that you were like, okay, I'm going to make something that's like sculptural or whatever? Or was it even a sculpture?
I mean, it was actually a smaller version of that large piece of subjection, but it was tiny. It was like a maquette, but it was turned upside down so that the sculpture, the base, was on the bottom. I actually used that. So what happened is I used this smaller maquette to apply for a residency. And that was a part of my proposal. And so I got the residency. This was at Art Gym. And what happened was that's kind of what happened. Like I made another model that was similar to that, only instead of using the actual image of the print, I used these like a stiffer paper so that I could figure out how to make the openings in which to put the print. And in doing so, that like actually have that hanging in my studio. I don't know if you saw it. It was hidden when you were there. That was the catalyst to this, like, oh wait, it doesn't need image. It's like a whole other shape on its own. It eventually like took the paper out and it's pretty with those pieces of paper in it, but it's not necessary right now.
Was that your first residency, the art gym residency?
That was my second. I'd done a fellowship prior to that. So I went from grad school to a fellowship at a craft school. And it was actually at the craft school where I learned how to do this like wood cutting techniques. It's called curve cutting. And so, yeah, James McNabb, he's the artist. He was teaching in the wood shop there, and he taught this technique, and I just kind of like fell in love with it. It was different than what it is now because I've kind of like tried to make it my own. So then I, kind of put the little sample pieces I had made away. Got back to Denver, like the fellowship was over. That was in New Jersey. Came home, kind of fell apart. I went through this like really kind of dark space. And then I got that residency at Art Gem. And that was kind of the transformation. So it was also in this like making of these objects that got me out of the dark space, like got me through this time that I was going through. But it was also like a remaking of myself in remaking of this body of work. Right. So that's where they came from. And then I just like, we have a relationship now. I and these pieces of wood have a relationship. And yeah.
You touched on the kind of wood that you use. And I saw watched another talk that you did. I think it was with Kaya Butcher, maybe. But so there's the Paduk wood, right? And then there's another wood that you work with as well. Is that correct?
Wenge. Mm-hmm.
What is it called?
It's called Wenge.
Wenge? Okay. Mm-hmm. And both of these are hardwoods?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're African hardwoods, yeah.
But they work as far as this process that you've kind of made your own, that you learned about, and then you made your own. Initially, when I saw some of these pieces, I thought you were somehow, I didn't realize that it was done with this cutting technique. I thought you were like somehow bending these pieces, how like, and I don't know a ton. My dad's a woodworker, but I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But, you see people that are like immersing wood so that they become somewhat malleable, and then they are able to bend it in certain directions. Initially, when I saw your work, that's what I thought you were doing. But it was after listening to some of these talks that you've done that I was like, oh, wow, it's an actual cutting technique.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to kind of like figure that out to do what you wanted to do with it? And how much has that evolved since you learned how to do that?
I did a lot of learning during that residency, that was a 6-month long residency, and just like a ton of tests and mess ups and angles. And so a curve cut, like I'll talk about what a curve cut is, because that's basically what I'm doing. It's like it's used in construction a lot, or like, home building, where you will cut into wood a bunch of times in a row in order to bend the wood. And usually you'll see it on like molding around your baseboard. So if you have like a curved molding, that was made with curve cuts to get it to curve around. And so the cuts are usually straight up and down, not often measured, you know what I mean? So kind of just like placed so that they're there. And so what I wanted to do was make the cuts different so that I could make the wood bend differently, right? So there are different measurements and angles, but you essentially have to use the same measurement in whatever cut you're making. So what I try to figure out if there's an angle. It's like, instead of making like a straight cut, I would make an angled cut. So like a 45 degree or 27.5 degree, right? And depending on the depth and the angle of that cut, that will change the way that the wood bends. And then also you add like the thickness of the wood and the hardness and, like all the stuff that goes into it, which is why hardwood is more appropriate, because the soft wood will just bend out of shape, right? So it's not going to really hold its shape because doesn't have integrity. So yeah, that's what I've done. And then, there are certain, I have the degree that I like to use that works best for me. That's like the most flexible, but also the least amount of like breakage and, et cetera. So that's how I've kind of tried to make it my own. Plus, it's representative, I think, at least for me, in that like, even the when I go to buy my supplies, right? I cannot tell you how many times a day I get a look or like a frowny face, or like I go to Home Depot and I'm buying wood and people are looking at me like, what are you doing buying wood? Like that happens on a daily, every single day. Right. And so the way that I can kind of respond to that is to cut into this wood. And it's really kind of like I am cutting into like these institutions and the structure that says that I shouldn't be doing this. Like that's what I'm doing. I'm like subverting, I'm subverting, and it's like the way that I can get back at people. So if I take, I don't know, like a 12-inch piece of wood and I put 300 cuts in that piece of wood, it's like relieving for me, but it's representative. And it's saying that here's this, like, you think that only, white men can shop at Home Depot and buy wood and glue and nails and shit, here's the way that I'm going to like break down this system of straight white maleness. I'm going to put curves in it. I'm going to cut it up to the point where you think it's going to break, but it's not actually going to break. I'm not going to break. I'm going to go and I'm going to flow my basket through Home Depot, and I'm going to make this beautiful curve. And then now you're going to be asking me how I do this. Right. And so I'm like taking the power back, but it's like, I get super amped up about it because it also takes, and this goes back to, I'm realizing this right now. It goes back to that experience in grad school where I had to literally like push against my program director every day to say, I'm not that, I'm this, and I'm stronger than that. Right. I'm doing that now, today, every single day. So that's what these cuts mean for me. And they don't necessarily, if someone else is doing it, it doesn't have to mean that for them, but that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it gets me through some days where I'm just like, fuck you. I don't need help with this wood. Like, I'm fine. I know what I'm doing, or if I go to like big name, I don't want to call anyone out because I'm not sponsored, even though I would like to be. I go to the store to get the stuff. They're like, oh, what are you doing with this? I'm like, every time I have to answer. I don't have to answer, but every time, what are you doing? And they know me there. Like I'm there once a week, every time. So it's like, yeah.
So like power tools and stuff, they're asking you, what are you going to do with this stuff?
Oh my God. I mean, I bought a table saw one time and I'd look and find someone to help me get it into the cart because it's a big box. Right. And then all the questions like, are you sure this is the one you want? And I'm like, yeah, I've been researching for like 6 months. Yes, this is the one I want. If I go to another store and I use copper in my work, and so I'll go and buy, like copper tubing. And God forbid I go to a certain store where I don't know where it is, like, the layout's different and I have to ask. And the immediate question when I say, where's the copper tubing? Well, what are you using it for? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer this question. It's not for plumbing. And they're like, well, you know that you shouldn't use copper for plumbing. You should use PVC. And I'm like, I know, I want copper tubing, so every time.
So it just blows me away. First of all, I mean, I could see me asking like that kind of question, like, oh, what are you using it for? As like, just like, I'm just like shooting the shit with you and just out of curiosity, but it doesn't feel like that's what in the vein that they're asking, like why do you need this?
I mean,
I can't wrap my head around that. And once again, right? I guess it's because
because you're a white middle-aged dude,
old
right?
White cis male.
Nobody's
right?
going to ask you whether or not you.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously,
in my head, when you're telling this story, Autumn, I'm thinking to myself, when I'm trying to buy this table saw and me imagining myself in your place, I'm thinking what's coming out of my mouth is I actually need it because I need to cut up the dumb motherfucker that asked me that same question. Like,
that's in your head. See, and
right.
Here's the thing. You can say that.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say that either, but in my head, I would be saying that. I'd be like,
get the point, right? Like,
yeah,
listen here, asshole. Like,
right.
Why you even asked me that?
No, it's, it's a thing.
Yeah. And it's something, and this is another takeaway from this podcast, because we talk with so many different artists, right? Like we're talking not just with guys, we talk with females, we talk with people of different ethnicities. And, Wes and I have totally different experiences. So I've never thought about the fact that, if if I was a Black female trying to buy supplies at Home Depot, that I might get sideways glances or, asked really stupid questions like, what are you doing with the table saw? It's like,
Well, I might ask a stupid question just like out of like, what are you using the table saw for? I'm just like curious, but I can't see. And I guess it's the ignorance in me that like, I can't even fathom me like questioning why you would buy anything. It's just like, who the fuck does that? I mean, you can buy whatever the fuck you want and do whatever you want with it.
Like, yeah. Like what is the answer that's going to be like, oh yeah, okay, you can buy it still.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I wouldn't think like that at Home Depot because I walk around, I have a couple different Home Depots that I go to, but I mean, you see everybody under the sun in Home Depot, Right. I don't think anything about it. I'm just like, I'm there buying my supplies and half the time I'm thinking, God, I'm such a dumbass. Like I don't know what I'm looking for. And all these other people seem like they know what the hell they're doing. So that's my thought in my head.
No, I think I don't know. I think the next time you go, look at the people that are in the sections. And I don't want to say like profile the store.
Right.
But there's a certain amount of, and at least in my experience, there's a certain amount of like, these are the people that are in these aisles. These are the people that are in these aisles. Like these are people carrying paint, and maybe it's me, like I'm like, I tend to be really like aware of what's happening. I'm just like super lucky and I like all the things, like I'm looking at everything. And the other part of that is who, like I can go to a store and be looking around for an associate to help me. And if I'm in the wrong aisle, then an associate walks by, the assumption is I don't need help because I'm not shopping in this aisle, right? That's been my experience. And so if I'm in the wood aisle or if I'm looking for, instead of like the, 8-foot long pieces of 4x4, because that won't fit in my, passenger size car, I'm actually looking for the project panel size because that will fit in my trunk. And I ask that question to an associate who I have to stop, who works in that aisle. There's this whole like look of like, wait, you're asking about the wood? And then they're like, oh, this is where you need to go. Like, that's the kind of like nonverbal experience that is super frustrating. Like, I belong here just as much as you belong here. My money is going to pay for your check. And I'm not that like elitist asshole where I'm just like, you should be working for, like, I'm not that person. But at the same time, like, I'm in the store to buy something. You work in the store. Let's make a deal. You know what I mean?
That's the least you should expect from him. It's like, hey, or her, like, hey, what can I help you with? You know?
Yeah.
Jesus God.
I'm obviously lost, right? So
right.
At least help me get unlost.
So I'm going to make a stupid comment here. You don't mind, do you?
No, I don't mind.
Okay. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed at Beaufort, South Carolina, and there was a big to-do about Denny's not being minority friendly. And there was a Denny's in Beaufort that my wife and I would go there with, and we'd have breakfast or dinner or whatever. And I never got good service there. And it was just like, I don't think it's necessarily, a skin color issue in this time, because I ain't getting shit either. So, but it's just, but it's, my point kind of is, it's really bizarre as being a white guy, in a sense that I hear these stories and it's just like, what the fuck? Why can't people just be friendly to other people? Right. And be helpful and supportive and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and once again, it just shows that there's a certain naivety to being, white in America, because, we don't think that way, because we don't have to, because somebody's going to say, Wes, you look lost. What are you looking for? Let me help you. And you're not having that because they're like, why is she here? Like, she obviously is in the wrong aisle. And instead of helping you, which would be like the first thing a person would think they would do, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for the, even if you're so dumb to say, are you looking for the wash machines? Because I can tell, because obviously a woman's going to be looking for a wash machine, right? Obviously I'm being sarcastic, people. So
yeah,
but Yeah. For the listeners out there that are, passively listening to this,
right.
It's just, I want to apologize for everybody because I just don't get it. And hearing this is so important because, it's and you're not the first one to say this. So this isn't a new lesson for us, but I'm still always dumbfounded that people are just assholes, Yeah.
Yeah. No. And, it goes back to, it fits within the concept of the work, right? Because it's not like all of that experience and all of that, like feeling that I take from point A to like idea to gathering the materials to fighting over how this is actually the right wood for me to going into the studio and cutting it and like releasing, it all goes into the work, right? And so when someone comes into either like my studio or wherever it's being shown or the picture, I hope for that same kind of like aha moment where someone looks at it and they're like, oh my God, like this is what I saw. And Todd, you mentioned this earlier. This is what I saw. And then I realized this, or I felt this, and oh my God, now I'm looking at you or this, or now I can look at this person. It could be a person, you're on vacation 1,000 miles away, you go back and now your mind is blown because you missed this whole thing. And now you're looking at people differently and you are like giving grace to people in a way that's more gracious, right? That's the point. That's why I do. Then, and if I didn't have to do this, if I didn't have to go to Home Depot one more time in my entire life, I would not. I have to, but I do it because this is like, it's my work. Like it's my work.
Yeah. You need to hire a buyer. You don't need that kind of frustration.
Yes.
A personal shopper.
100%. Yeah.
So, one comment, Todd, and then the floor is yours. I'm sorry. I'm so glad you're bringing this to the forefront, and I really admire the fact that you're taking, your experiences and putting it in art, and how that is being kind of healing for you in a sense that you're creating these beautiful pieces of art, and it's actually attributing to your mental health in a sense of all the bullshit you go through on a daily basis at Home Depot. And I appreciate the fact you let us into this side, and I'm sure our listeners do too, because when I'm looking at your art, I'm not making that connection, but now that I've heard the story, it definitely puts it in a different light, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing. And once again, this is a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, honestly, it goes both ways. It's good for me too.
Well, I was just going to speak on the fact that people do judge other people, right? And if you engage with people, if people just would engage with each other a little bit more, some of these things I think would kind of dissipate a little bit, at least, because I don't think you can engage with another person and make that connection and still have like stupid thoughts, right? Like, I mean, you can, but at the same time, I always think that if you engage with somebody, then you have that connection, you've learned something and they've learned something about you. And then you're much more cognizant about other people's experiences and the world that we live in. And it goes back to what you were just saying, Autumn, about, you have this experience and then you get your mind blown because you didn't realize that existed, that happens, that sort of thing. And what you're trying to do with your art is to engage the viewer, right? Like you want them to spend time with it. And if there's, another takeaway from this podcast is that it's easy to just do the drive-by, right? You're running through a gallery, you're running through a museum or whatever. I probably irritate people because I'll just stop and, stand for, a couple minutes in front of a piece and other people want to like come look at it. And I try to be, conscientious of that, but, give them enough space. But at the same time, like, I'm here at this museum. I want to check it out. I'm here at this gallery. I want to immerse myself in art. And I've learned too, that there's things that I've looked at that, initially didn't grab me, and I spend a little bit more time with it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is actually really amazing. Like I didn't get it the first time around. And now I get a feeling, I get emotion, I get a little more sense of what this is either what the thought behind it was from the artist, if the artist is there and I get to engage with him or her, or just spending time with it just in general. I have a whole different, take on it. And then we had a conversation the other night with a couple gentlemen about this gentleman that's outsider art, Rodney Bodie. And, some people don't get it. And some people it resonates with them. That happens all the time in art, right? But you'll always find the people that you want it to resonate with. Like those people will find it and seek it out.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think that what's a little frustrating, at least at times, is having the patience. And I think I'm trying to be patient with myself and to say that I'm dedicated to the path that I'm on right now. I've got I've got plans, so I'm here, but that doesn't mean that I'm impervious to I want people to be engaged, and I know that I want people to have to like my work. That's not a necessity, but I want to influence people, even if I piss them off, I've touched them, right? And so there are times when it's a little frustrating because I want the reception to be different. But that's, again, to your point, there's my work isn't for everyone, and that's okay. That's okay. But the people that will be most influenced by my work are in the world, you are in the world. We ran into each other in a time where it was time, right? And so I have to trust that that's going to happen for other people too.
And this continues to evolve, and the longer that you do it, the more people will get it, right? I feel like, the more people that get eyes on it and spend time with it, you'll get more traction. It resonates with more people. And then everybody's talking about autumn.
Maybe. Not everyone. That feels I don't want to be famous. That feels a little weird. And I just want to be able to buy food and pay my rent and go to the studio. With a few other things.
I think that's totally legit.
Yeah.
It's not for the money. It's not for the money. It's I want to be able to do it without limit, but I don't need to be rich. And maybe those two things can coexist. Yeah.
I think they can. Yeah. We really don't need that much stuff in this world, really. Yeah. You think about it. It's do you have food that you can eat that you have in your refrigerator, right? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have clothes to wear? And then everything beyond that is kind of gravy, right? It doesn't take that much. The happiest times of my life is when I had the least amount of money, to be honest with you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, I guess people know now, but I quit my job and my daytime job. And I obviously have less money than I did when I had a job, but I'm so much more happy, right? And in ways that are insurmountable. I feel like a little kid who's going to play in her studio with some responsibilities and things I have to do. And I'm totally worried about where's this money going to come from? Or there's that, but it's that almost doesn't matter, And so, yeah, I'm way happier. And freer and yeah. So it's I'm back in touch with the kid that was I want to be an artist. Now she finally gets to play. It's that, right? And the adult part has to do the money stuff and learn how to do business and hustle. But it's the kid gets to play now, which is nice.
Yeah. You have more balance in your life. Yeah. The balance kind of goes this way and that way, right? But the reality of it is there's no price that you can put on your happiness. And so, yeah, you might, I don't know what it is that you're into, but, maybe I'm not buying the newest iPhone or whatever this month because I don't have the money. Who cares? Whatever. But, you have all your needs met.
Yeah.
I just started speaking a different language. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah. Gives me something
stroked out there for a second.
Gives me something to edit, Todd.
Actually,
what's that? What's that, Autumn? I can leave it in.
Yeah.
Anyway. Makes him real.
You have all your needs met and you're happy. And yeah, so there's some sacrifice, but there's always sacrifice, you know, and I don't think money brings you happiness, and people that have money still have problems. So, you know, happiness counts for a lot. I tell my kids, you know, all the time, I'm like, I don't care what you do. I just want you to be happy. You know, you can be a garbage man for all I care, you know, if that's what you're happy doing, as long as you're able to pay your bills and feed yourself and all that stuff. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, I hope you aspire to something different, but
hey, we love all the garbage men out there because
we need them. I
need them.
100% necessary.
Every Friday, I need them to pick up. So we appreciate you. We love you. This is, you know, do your thing, man. And hopefully you're making art after you're picking up my trash. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say about life balance, when he said, you know, your life is in balance, if nothing else, it's balance in the direction you want it to be, and the freedom of being able to create art. And sometimes, you know, I think that's the cool thing. And the difference between you and me is the risk factor for me is too great for me to quit my day job and do what I truly love. And I hope to be able to just, I hope my boss ain't listening, to quit my job and do photography and do a podcast because I enjoy both equally. So
I think, I mean, that's a good point that you make. And I want that for you too. And I think for me, you know, my friends, all of my friends throughout my entire life would tell you that this was not an easy decision, but my circumstances allowed for this to be the time right now. Right. But that's not for everyone. And you know, the things that you have that keep you at your job, I don't have those things. Right. So there's still you have this, I have this. Right. And it's a trade-off. So all that to say, it has been other people's time years before my time. Like one of my good friends, it was her time before it was my time. And then another good friend, it's her time after mine. Right. So I'm just saying, like, it was my time, but it was also super scary and hard. And like, yeah, and still, I'm going to tear up right now. But this is my journey, and like, it's time for me, and it'll be time for someone else and time for you when it's time, you know?
Yeah. I appreciate the fact that you're bringing it real, right? That it's not easy. It's a hard decision, and it's not going to be easy, and there'll be some difficulty, but I am so much freer for that, because I think that allows people to go, okay, if I leap, it's not necessarily mean it's going to be easy, or I don't have to wait for myself to think it's easy, that I can make that leap and still have knowing that it's going to be a hard decision. So I'm glad you spoke to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm like trying to control, because it's hard, you know, but there's also I've had multiple people tell me at different times, like, what it might feel like to feel like it's okay to leap and like have faith and believe in yourself and like trust and all the things. Right. And so those feelings have built up over years, and like me also having put in work and like sacrificed a ton of things to go to a job, and to like continue to do a thing until I felt like it was time. So that to say, it's not even easy. It's not easy to do it, but it's also not easy to think about it or to plan for it or to think. It's scary, but it's also very, very liberating. And knowing, like, you know, I've had some ton of support, like, you know, I don't want to do the whole thing, but people show up when you say, when you say, I need help because this. And that's also what I'm learning, and that, you know, space has been filled in ways that I never thought that it would happen, you know? So there's also a certain amount of like trusting yourself, trusting the universe, and then trusting your community. And someone said that to me not just now, and we're going to talk about it, and he's going to be like, I told you. He'll know who he is. But yeah, but all of that has to come together on time. If one's missing, then it's not going to work.
Right.
At least that's my take on it. So, yeah.
Hello, it's Todd Pearson. Happy fall to everyone. Wes and I want to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's N-U-E. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on their Instagrams. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening.
Autumn T. Thomas, you're listening to the Tenant Podcast.
You made the comment about, you not caring about being famous. When I mentioned that, when I said that comment as far as like, and then everybody will be talking about Autumn, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking more in terms of people know your work. Like when they see one of your pieces, they go, hey, that's a Autumn T. Thomas right there. Or they come over to my house and there's a sculpture, in my front yard or sitting in my living room, right? And they go, oh my God, you have an Autumn T. Thomas,
Yeah.
I mean, your work is so, to me, it's unique because I had never seen anything like it. Are there many people that do this kind of art, this kind of sculpture?
No, not with the curve. I mean, people do curve cuts, like people make work with curve cuts, and people make sculptural work, right? But I haven't seen any that have combined the two. I mean, there's some, like, if you're looking for wood sculpture that is just like really beautifully refined, that's similar to mine. I mean, I could, send you a list of people. And it's more like I'm more inspired by the finishing, and that, the work is like superbly finished and polished and just like the craftsmanship, right? So that I look for. And then the curve cut part of it, I just want it to be unique and different. And like, I'll tell you, you could actually, if you want to take the part about me not wanting to be famous out, you could totally take that out. That's like
you.
That's like my own kind of like fear, my inner fear is coming out.
But I'm with you.
I think it's real though. I think it's true.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
I would never want to be famous. I'm with you. I just don't give a shit about that. Like, I really don't.
Yeah,
I just don't care. I'm with you. I just want to be able to support myself, my family, or whatever with what I do and have that happiness, right? Like, that to me is the ultimate. Like, I don't care about who cares. But I mean, I know that some people, that's their aspiration. They want to be famous, but not me. So I totally related to that, but I just wanted to, I guess, kind of suss out, like, this was my thought, as far as, when people are talking about your work, it's because, they've seen it and they're like, oh, it's so distinct, it's like, I know what that is when they see it.
So what's funny, what's real funny, and then I want you to go where you're going. But so when my wife asked me tonight, she goes, so who are you talking to? And I brought up your website, and she goes, oh, that's what we saw at Redline.
Oh, I love that.
So she immediately recognized it was your work that we saw. So, I mean, Todd's already what Todd has said is already coming to fruition. And in a sense, she didn't know your name, but she recognized your style of art. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And then Todd kind of, Todd kind of putting that out there, like, people recognize your art. Well, it's already happening. So, I mean, I had this experience again, grad school. I went to do this sort of like, I don't know, internship at a printmaking place. It's like well-known printmaking place. And the man was he was mean. In ways that weren't appropriate. But I remember him saying, I showed him my portfolio of stuff that had gotten critiqued like the week before. And, he gave his opinion. And the thing he said was, you need to work on making a distinct style, like making work that says it's your work. And so he just took me back to that. And like, it's like, it gets emotional because there's a lot, like everything is in this like world of mine, right? So like everything that I have goes into me being a good and wholesome artist. And when I say everything, I literally mean everything, right? So
to have moments that I can look back on and like, I can relive a moment that was really, really hard and have one of you guys say, or the community or someone just do a thing that like reinforces this moment that it feels really nice. So I appreciate you saying that, Todd. Like I hear you. Thank you for your wife, like to your wife. And it means more than, and I think for a lot of artists, I think it means much more than we can articulate to be like received, So, yeah.
At what point did you start incorporating copper and metal into the work?
From the beginning, honestly. I love working with metal. And I had been, so I did some I learned some, metal smithing in school. And there's something about combining metal with another like natural material that I really loved. And so even in the artist books that I made, there was always like paper and metal or book cloth and metal. And this is like the combination I loved. And so it felt natural for me to also take the metal into the woodworking. And I think because they're like contrasting materials, but not necessarily so. They're just like they complement each other. But it's copper specifically because it's one of the oldest metals and it's a conduit for energy. And so I like the idea of, and it's strong enough to be sort of like a detailed support for like some of my pieces that are like off kilter or they're like unbalanced. The copper is it's like a nice detail that also hides the structure, right? That is keeping the piece upright. But it's also it's a conduit for energy, right? So it's like healing and it's allowing either like it's my soul to pass through the work and be in the work and then to flow into you once you have the work at home and you live with it. So it's like it plays a part.
That was beautifully put. The fact that you're thinking so deeply about this really shows how deep this art life is for you. Like you said, it's everything to you. And just hearing you talk about that, it so comes through. And it's a really, I loved how you explained that. And the fact that you want it to be a conduit from your soul through our soul and, and to have that kind of continue on. Wow, that's a poetic. And I wish people that would, that didn't know you when they see that, I think some of that comes through, but it's so nice to hear that because, the next time I see your work, it's going to make me look at it in a different way. Right. Instead of, it's a sculpture and then trying to wrap my head around and Todd knows sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my head around stuff. So to now come back and look at your stuff from a different point of view, it's so nice to hear your intention with it. So yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
I think that engagement with whoever you're talking with, whatever artists, that counts for a lot of times. And I don't think that the artists, we've had plenty of conversations about this as well, is that you don't need to give everything away. You don't need to have complete, give them everything, all the pieces of the puzzle, because you want them to, soak it in and have their own little takeaway in addition to what, you have on your mind when you're producing the piece. But it's so nice to hear the thought process behind the work and hear it directly from the artist. It really does make a difference. How is your experience? Do you find that you're able to either get a new collector or people start to resonate more with the art when you're able to engage with them directly?
It varies, to be honest. There's certainly times when someone will fall in love with the image. And then once we talk about it, they like, it's really actually one of my favorites. You can see like a realization happen in their face and they just like fall in love all over again. I like, that's awesome. And even if they don't buy the work, there's a knowing where we've just like, we're in relationship now, and they walk away and that feels akin to them buying the work, right? It's not financial, but so there's that part. But then I've also had a man buy a piece and I have yet to meet him in person, but he saw the work in person. And I think someone talked to him about it and then he bought the work and then I shipped it to him. And then we've had conversations about it, but he was so in a place where it touched him where he was and he didn't need me to be there to talk about it. So it's been both. like you're saying, I think it depends where a person is, and I think if someone's open enough to receiving what the work is about, and to degrees, right? So let's say there are 3 degrees of info, right? There are 3 levels of the work. There are actually like probably 5. But if you're open to level 1, that's all you're going to hear. There's this sort of learning how to read people and like talk to people and figure out what they're able to receive. And I've been doing like, First Fridays for a few months. There's a certain point where a person becomes saturated if they can't hear any more about the work. Right. So if I'm saying like level 1 stuff is like how I made it, and this is what kind of wood it is, and then I say that one trigger word that's too much for them, like their eyes kind of like glaze over. They are done. Like they're not going to hear anymore that I can talk all day, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but they're not receiving it. And then there are other people that, they just are like, oh yeah. And then, they'll stop and get quiet and they'll think, and then they'll come back with another question, and now they're ready for level 2. Right. So there's kind of that. And it's actually been fun to figure that out with people, and like watching people and learning how to engage in ways that's, helpful for me in order to sell the work or to make a friend, or even just to have like an admirer. I didn't even know that, like, I'd love to have collectors, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to have collectors. It is, but it's not, it's the look on the face when people are like, oh my God, I get it. It's very fulfilling.
That's the best compliment right there, right?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a hug.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe it. It's like a hug.
Yeah. Hugs don't feed me, but hugs are great.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugs will get you through times when maybe it's lean or you don't have enough food, right?
True.
That love. But it's nice to eat. As our friend Bob Ragland would always say, you got to heat and you got to eat. Got to heat and eat.
It's true.
He'd always say, my master is Safeway. Safeway and Excel. That's what he'd say. Right, Wes?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. And I take your point too. It's one thing, like to explain the art and how, what it meant to you. But if it evokes something in me, that's even better, right? Without the artist saying anything, if I'm evoking something from it, and it may be totally, and we've had that conversation where, the artist is standing and the 2 ladies are talking about it, and they're seeing things that he's like, wait a minute, no, that's not what it meant. And I think he went to talk to him about what it really was. And then I think he was like, later was like, I should have just let them think what it is, because that's really what it's about. Right. Is, it's, I'm always curious. I'm the curious guy. Is like, what made you come up with this idea of creating this, and what does it mean, and what's it represent? And sometimes I need to be handheld through art. But, when you don't have that, it's nice to like sit back, and like what Todd said is, I was always the walker by, right? I just kind of or drive by art enthusiast. But doing this podcast is, you'll hear, if you listen to any more of our stuff and haven't been bored with our conversation tonight, that I've really turned around and can look at stuff now and have a totally different feeling, where before I wouldn't have. And so, here, and then you're just so poetic with how you're describing stuff. It's just fun to listen to. Thanks. So, yeah. Todd, ask another great question.
Okay. So I got to ask you this, because I ask this quite frequently, but I get this feeling from you from the moment that I met you. And to put this in context, so I found out about you through our mutual friend, Rose Frederick. And this happened as we had befriended her, and we're still in the midst of the pandemic, but in 2020, and we're trying to get, because we're always trying to mix it up. We're trying to get people that work in different mediums on the podcast. And so she was feeding me artists' names, and you were on that list. And so I checked out your work. I'm like, all right, I like this. So she goes on my list. And then I went up to BMOCA to check out the show that you were in there. And all of a sudden I just lost the name of it.
From this day forward.
For this day forward, right?
Right.
Or from this day forward. No. So I went up to check out that show with a friend of mine because Rochelle Johnson was in that show. And I really love Rochelle's work. And I'm like, I want to see this in person. So I got my buddy. We went up, we did an art day. We go there and, he didn't know what he was going to see. Like I just drug him along, but he's much more versed in art than I am. And he was just completely blown away by that show.
Yeah.
And one of the first things you saw when you walked into the exhibition was a bunch of your work. And I was like, oh God, this is Autumn's work. This is who Rose is telling me about. I've seen, some of the work on her website. And so that was like, that was the connection right there. For me, I was like, okay, now I get to see this work in person, which you can appreciate it on the website. But once again, it's like any other art. Seeing it in person is so much better than looking at a screen on your computer, an image on your computer. So I got to see your work there. And we'll talk about some of those pieces in a moment. Mm. Then you got a space at Bit Factory. And Bill became familiar with your work. I don't know if he might have been familiar with it before, but anyway, so you were in a show this summer at Bit Factory with a bunch of group exhibition with a bunch of other artists. Mm-hmm. And then we got to see it again at Redline. And so, it's like the universe kind of gives you little pieces of the puzzle all the time.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about, what? We haven't talked to anybody that's done, sculptural work in a while. We haven't talked to any sculptors. And I'm thinking to myself, I really need to get Autumn on. And so I was meeting with our friend Rose. I'd already reached out to Autumn, a meeting with Rose to see some work at Bit Factory. And we had a little bit of correspondence. And at the end of the day, when I was saying goodbye to Rose, I'm like, I'm going to swing back by the studios, and because you weren't there earlier in the day, and see if Autumn is in her studio. And I go to open the door to the studios, and they always keep it locked, but it was locked. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'll maybe try to just reach out to her again if I don't hear from her in a couple of days. And I turn around, and there you are sitting in your car. And I go up and introduce myself, and I know you had that look in your eyes, like, is he gonna ask me for money or harass me or something?
I did. You said, "Are you Autumn?" And I was like, "I am," but who are you? And I had a whole moment of what? So yeah.
She just came from Home Depot.
She was
just come from Home Depot.
That's awesome.
Actually, I think it was Ace, actually. But yeah. Yeah.
And that was a long-winded setup to ask this question, which is, I immediately felt a connection with you, and we were having a good time and talking in your studio and laughing and stuff. Are you an empath? Do you feel people? You feel like you seem to me like you really are in tune to what's going on.
I think I am an empath. I hesitate to say that, because I don't want to jump on the like empath bandwagon, and it's like cool to be an empath. However, I do like to connect with people in ways that like are outside of, how do I say this? Maybe it's empath, right? It could be that, but I like to call it something that feels less like word of the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that's not to take away from your question, because I understand you're asking, but I don't want to just like package it up into a nice little word.
Sure. I totally get it.
I'm avoiding doing that. But there are moments where, like, if you're very passionate about something, I can feel that. Yes, I feel other people's feelings, but it's not so much like an empath, like a scientific term. It's more just like an in touch with the person. And so maybe it's more on a like a universal level, like we are supposed to be in kind. So then I'm in kind with you, right? So we are supposed to be in alignment with each other. Whereas someone else, if there could be a person walking down the street that is completely feeling things, and I might be aware of them feeling things, but it's not to the degree of like me really receiving their feelings, right? So I think that's it. I mean, I think about, I don't know if you're familiar with Octavia Butler, either of you.
Yeah.
Familiar. Okay. I haven't admittedly have not read any of her books. Have you, Wes?
No, I can't say I've read any of her books, but I've, obviously heard stuff on podcasts and stuff about like that. Yeah.
Okay. So I bring her up because I like to think of myself as a shapeshifter, and a shapeshifter is like one of her characters. So a shapeshifter is an empath, but in ways that are different, right? So I kind of like to look at myself that way, and like an I don't know, art superhero kind of way. Does that answer the question? So I'm answering it the way that I want to answer it.
Yeah. Well, you should answer it.
Yeah, you should make it your own.
Yeah.
So I got a question of her books. Which one do you like the best?
I figured you might ask that.
Well, which one would you recommend to 59 cis male white guy?
Well, see, that makes it harder.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to make it easy. Like, here, let me start with the easy one. Like, start with her first one. And
I don't know.
I'm being kind of, just obviously I'm facetious or whatever, but not malicious, but facetious.
Give you that as a pass. I'm not.
Okay. I will scratch that whole question then.
No, it's okay. I mean, it depends on what you like, because I mean, if you like, do you like sci-fi, to like start with? Do you like sci-fi, or do you like, I mean, she's Afrofuturism, speculative fiction. And so there's a certain amount of like, you have to be in that genre.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like anyone couldn't just
pick it up and read it.
Pick it up and be like, oh my God, I love this. Maybe they could. It's Octavia Butler. But I'm just saying, like, you have to also like that kind of writing. So, I mean, definitely like what people have been reading, the last year and a half, 2 years, is the parables. So parables, the sower and the talents, because they're very relatable to today and what's happening. And, in terms of like pandemic and the most recent president, there's a lot of just like relativity in that. So that's a good entrance.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. I always like to hear what people recommend as far as reading. It's fascinating, what other people are reading. So and I'm sure other people like to hear what. I'll definitely do a deeper dive into her because I'm familiar. I wouldn't say I'm familiar with her work. I know of her work, but I wouldn't say obviously, because I'm not a sci-fi necessarily kind of guy. So maybe that's why I don't. But I definitely would love. I'll probably do a deeper dive into her stuff, just to like get familiar with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I would honestly, if you're not super familiar, I mean, Octavia Butler all day long, like hands down. But if you need a short story kind of dive in to get familiar, I love, in a podcast version, right? I love LeVar Burton's podcast. It's called LeVar Burton Reads. Yep. And he reads mostly speculative fiction by not only, right, like Black artists, but like across the world. It's my favorite podcast, and I hate when he goes on vacation or like, the season ends. It is my hands down favorite podcast.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's what I recommend.
Cool. Well, no, that's good. Thank you for your recommendation. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you've done a handful of residencies, and one of these actually kind of helped you with what you're doing now, it sounds like, right? Right. That was the art gym residency. Mm-hmm. So what does a residency do for an artist, and what did it do for you? in thinking about the different ones that you've done?
Wow. I mean, I've done 2 here in Denver. I've done Art Gem, and then I did Platform. And I think, I mean, they've done different things, but I think the goal is for them to really kind of allow space for making, right? Whether it's physical space or mental space, you know, to like deep dive into, I don't know, like a body of work or an install, or, you know, I mean, Art Gem really was the catalyst for this work that I'm making now. So, you know, and it was a 6-month, like I was there as much as I could be. And, you know, I don't want to say like I made some people angry because I made dust and I like pushed the rules of what was, you know, what was allowed in the space. You know, it's like a maker space, but not for woodworking. But at the time it wasn't not for woodworking. Right. So I just like pushed the boundary, because I didn't know that I was going to be here either. Right. So there was that, but that residency like really allowed me to do this deep dive and to come out on the other end where I am now ish. And I took it very seriously, right? Like, Platform, when I did that residency there, I mean, it was a shorter time, it was 8 weeks. And it was mid-pandemic. That was harder. And, you know, we have interns there, and I should do like a talk about Platform. But there were interns there. So I had also these workshops that I did on Saturdays. So there was like a residency work, like where I deep dive into my work. And then I also kind of like share information in like a class with high schoolers. So that was kind of twofold. But I mean, so the broader end of your question, I think really is, and it's, you know, the same answer when we talk about what, like, if someone is supposed to go to school or like go get your M.F.A, it's what you bring to it, right? So you don't just get a residency and then now all of a sudden it's over and you've come out having made work. Like, it's how much time I think you're willing to spend in the residency, like in the space that you're given or like in the time that you have. But I think the goal really is for space. It like creates space for creating. Yeah, I mean, the Platform, like, so I got that residency. I found out in 2019. And then it was supposed to start, I think it was supposed to start January, if I remember, or maybe actually, no, March. It was supposed to start in March. And, you know, everything shut down. March of 2020, I should say. Everything shut down, and they called and they're like, you know, we're probably going to be all digital if we continue. Do you want to do the residency or do you want to postpone? And I thought about it, and there was an artist that, Stephen Frost, he was scheduled to go before me. He had postponed. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it because I don't have anything else to do. You know, like I needed, and I've been waiting for that. I'd been waiting almost a year for the residency to start. So I needed something, you know. So I said I would do it. And there were tons of changes. And, you know, we went from like, maybe we'll be like, you know, virtual classes to not, or like, we don't know. And I had this whole plan for everyone to be in person. So I had to like make a whole new program. And yeah, so we got through it. It was hard. And, you know, the students, like, I don't think that I'm sure that the students don't realize it, but they actually got me through that residency. Because it was hard, you know, and then, you know, you're dealing with pandemic stuff, and I was still kind of like in the stuff that I was going through. So it was still like dark space kind of for me. And so on the one side, I had something to focus on and I had people to kind of like be around. But on the other side, I had to show up in ways that it was just like really hard. Right. So what I ended up doing for that space was like, I created this like installation. This image is on my website too, where you go in and it's like a labyrinth. And so you kind of have to like walk through the space, and you interpret it as walking through this space of like, I don't know what the fuck is happening right now. And I don't know how to find myself. And then you get to the center and you find yourself, which is the sculpture. And, you know, I brought up Octavia Butler. I committed to reading only Octavia Butler for the entirety of that residency to kind of like get in the mindset of shapeshifting and like overcoming things in ways that I didn't know how to overcome. And so again, it goes back to thinking about like, you can do anything if you know how to figure out how to do anything. And that's where I was. I just was like, I don't know how to do what I'm doing in all the ways, like not even just the residency and the art, but in life, I didn't know how to do what I was supposed to be doing. And so it was like, that's what that residency did for me, was allow me to kind of rethink my path and the way that I maneuver. And so, and this is, you know, the image is there's a piece on the left, which is called Wild Seed. That's kind of the entrance. So you go to the left around that wall, then you like walk around. I mean, the image, like you said, Todd, images don't really do it justice because it like flattens it, but you kind of like walk through the space and then you get to like one point where there's a stop and you have to turn around, where there's a print with a saying on it. And then, so when you finally, you find your way through the center, and that's that piece that's in the middle. I'm pointing at the screen like you can see me. You can't see me. But the piece that's in the circle, it's called Third Eye Musings Center. And it's like the eye of the labyrinth, or the heart of the labyrinth. I mean, it's literally the eye, and it's in the round, and it rotates so that it like represents your third eye, or the way in which you can kind of like intuit your environment and ways to get out of what might be a harmful environment, right? And it just like, for me, it was a way to figure out how to make that work. And the making of the work was a way for me to figure out how to get myself through what I was going through, right? And I remember so vividly, I was making the work, and like studio was all messy, and it was like toward the end of my time, you know, before install. And I had a friend there helping me, and I was working on Third Eye Musings, this last piece that I finished. And she's like, she said, her question was something like, what is your plan with this piece? And I honestly, I didn't know. I had no idea what the plan was. Because it's not done until it's done. Like the plan isn't ready until it's ready. And it turned out that was meant to be the center of the piece. And it turned out that was like the most well-received piece. You know, interesting that I had no idea what it was going to be until it was done, right? So, and I think that's kind of like the point of I don't know, like that's what happens in life. And that's what that residency did for me, right? So being able to kind of get through a thing that sucked. You know, and the residency didn't suck, but the entirety of that time period was really hard. Right? Yeah.
So I want to ask a question. When you're going through this residency and you're creating this bigger piece, right? Not just the little pieces that come together within it. How much planning did you do? Like, do you do a lot of planning as far as sitting down and sketching out, like, here's what I think this is going to be? Or is this all just intuitive in you and you're just building as you go?
For that, I did a lot of planning. So I had laid out the space, the building, the studio space. I laid that out, and, you know, like I will use either SketchUp or Illustrator, which I love using Illustrator. And as best I can, like with this piece in particular, I had a floor plan and I put circles at every point in the 120 feet of that space, right? Excuse me. And then I had to kind of figure out to plan the design of the layout, and then, you know, throw my budget in there and how many tubes that I would need, and et cetera. So yeah, that it's such a big, there is no way that I could have just put that together. So large scale stuff, yes. There's a large install that I'm working on right now that's taken all the planning, and still needs more planning. But that's a pretty big piece. The smaller ones, like the sculpture piece that is in the center there, that one, I don't like to plan those. I like them to be, like improvisational, and when you think about jazz and like musicians and like people who get really, really good at their craft, even like freestyling, rappers who get so good at their craft that it becomes intuitive. It's like muscle memory. I want to be there. So that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's just kind of curious from, because I don't, not that I don't plan my photography or whatever. But a lot of times it's a lot of the stuff I take because it's landscape and revolves lighting and, how the lights are. Sometimes I'm not, unless I'm thinking, okay, I want to catch this sunrise because it's going to do this, then, that's the planning. But it's really interesting, coming from like a sculptor or even a painter, like how much planning they do. And then I really kind of admire the fact that, on those smaller pieces that you're kind of freestyling, you're letting it kind of develop on its own. And like good jazz, right? There's always a form that they stick to. But then within that form allows a lot of freedom, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I was telling Todd, like we talked briefly about this, but there's a certain amount of like when I'm working on a piece, right? I get to the point where I've cut and the wood is very pliable and I haven't formed it into its shape yet. There's like it's almost like a relay race where I'm working on my current idea, but then another idea will come because I will have bent a certain shape and then I have to put that here. And then, so it's like I relay from idea to idea. But what happens if I try to sketch it, it's like, it's not right because I'm not there yet. So I can't articulate the idea. And if I try to draw it, it's wrong. So it's much easier for me, at least in this form, to sketch while I'm making. And the photo that you just showed, Todd, that wild seed, that first little seedling, that was a sketch. So yeah.
I really like that piece. It's really lovely.
Well, thanks.
So are you really just focused on that one piece that you're working on at that one time? Or do you have multiple projects going on at any given time? I mean, we talked to a lot of artists, but painting's different, painting, you like got to wait for paint to dry and stuff. And so a lot of times painters have 3-10 different paintings going on. And depending on how they either feel or what's going on with the piece, they'll work on, they have something else to work on. Mm-hmm. What is your process?
I mean, I usually have several things going on. At once. I mean, sometimes like I'll get to a point with one piece where it's, I've cut it and molded it and filled it with resin, and then I have to let the resin cure. And there may be several iterations of that process. So while that's doing its thing, then I'll have something else that I'm working on. And especially right now where I'm trying to have smaller pieces available. So I have other projects happening, right? So like I'm working on this series of pencils that are similar to my sculptures, but they're pencils. So I'm working on that. And sometimes I work at home, like I have a whole other like home studio-ish. So sometimes I like bring something home and work on it here. Here meaning I'm at home right now. So yeah, I will tend to have multiple things going on. Yeah.
And what's the biggest piece that you've done to date?
I mean, there's a piece that I'm hoping to have finished in January. That will be the biggest piece. And we're still waiting for like 100% approval on that. But it will be like a big wall install. That will be the biggest, but next to that, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. It's between like Lift Every Voice, which is the piece that you saw at BMOCA, and the first piece that we started with, Subjection.
Okay.
Those two are roughly the same size.
So let's talk about Lift Every Voice, because this is really magnificent. Talk about the catalyst for this and the thought behind it and how long it took you to do this.
Yeah. So this piece was commissioned by B. Mocha, curated by Tia Anthony, another really good artist friend. I remember Tia reaching out to me. So I'd created a smaller model of this piece sometime, I don't know, in like 2019 or 2019, I think. And Tia reached out and she says, what do you think about making a larger version of that? And I was like, oh my God, yes, because I want to do, like, that was the plan, and 100%. She talked about her, her curating the show, and that's kind of where it started. So she definitely was the catalyst, partial catalyst, I think. The other side of that is we talk about the social uprising in 2020. That was the other. And I think, I was having so many feelings and so many, like, it's just like a lot of anger around the response to the murder of George Floyd, right? And not just George Floyd, right? And I felt like, I feel like, and I still feel like the way that we talk about 2020 was that George Floyd was the catalyst to that, right? But he wasn't the first. He wasn't the first person murdered by the police, right? And he won't be the last. And so I had a lot of feelings around, like, well, if I don't feel good saying that George Floyd was the catalyst to this, because we are just like leaving out, Elijah McClain and like all the people that were killed like months before, right? So that kind of like spawned this, like, how do I memorialize more than one person so that we can like see this moment on a grand scale, not just one name? Because I feel like we start to like feel good that we can say one name and that's the thing, right? And so with this piece, I ended up wanting to create like a wind chime that would basically carry everyone's voice, so that when we say George Floyd, we're saying everyone's voice, right? Everyone's voice is like ringing with his name, right? And so he becomes more than the catalyst. He becomes like the person that, maybe sparked everyone's attention, but he's taking all of these other people with him, right? So it's not just him. And yeah, so that's where this piece came from. And it's a wind chime, I should say that. And so the point is for anyone who really views it to interact with it and to like wring your hands along the chimes, so that when you evoke the sound of the chimes, you're actually letting each one of these people's names kind of live in the air. You're letting their voices sing because they can't sing anymore. And it's allowing them to kind of like be in the atmosphere with their ancestors and to just like let their voice continue to be heard. That's what Lift Every Voice is. It's, I thought a lot about like Augusta Savage's work, and I don't know if you're familiar, but she did a sculpture during the Chicago World Fair that was called, we called it Lift Every Voice and Sing, that from the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. But that was a harp. She also called it the harp, right? So it was a sculpture that looked like a harp, and it had figures like carved into it, so that they were carrying, or like, the voices of the harp, right? So my piece is reminiscent of that work, which is reminiscent of the song Lift Every Voice, right? And so that, and I'm trying to speak to the nature of so there's the Sankofa nature, which again calls back to ancestry, and Sankofa means to, I break it down, it means to look back, but also to look back while moving forward. So ideally, the sense is to look back and carry with you as you move forward. So I'm trying to look back the people that have done work that inspires me, but that also kind of speaks to the same thing, the same issues that we are facing today, and to carry it forward while also carrying forward these young people, these Black people, some of them young, who are, lost to police violence, taking them with us and putting them in a space where they might not have otherwise been. They're in galleries and they're singing in galleries and I think, yeah. So, I mean, I could talk all day long. They're in spaces that they otherwise might not have been. So.
And you said that M.F.A commissioned this piece?
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, they don't own the piece, but they commissioned the creation of the piece.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's where I wanted clarification that this piece doesn't live there at M.F.A. It's not part of like a permanent collection there.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Was it difficult to do this piece?
Oh my gosh, it was really hard. Yeah. I remember calling Tia one time, and Rochelle too. Like we both talked each other through like the creation of this work. But I called Tia one night and like in tears, and I was just like, I can't do this, and I wanted to quit. Like I totally wanted to quit. And she talked me out of quitting. And I called another friend. I was like, I still want to quit. And it's just like there are moments where I'm like gonna get teared up again, where it's not just like the physicality of the work, and there's a ton of planning in that. And I mean, it's important work. And it's heavy, and it's meant to be uplifting and light, but it's heavy, I mean, metaphorically heavy. The piece itself is not that heavy. And I think my goal is for, families who are and have been directly affected by police violence, to be able to like find healing in this. Like that's the goal. And I think that there's a little bit of conflict that I feel, and that like I don't want to be the one that's sitting and benefiting from this work. It's like this work isn't for me, it's for the world. Like it's for people, and it's supposed to be, it's a living work that is supposed to go out and heal people, right? Like that's the goal of it. And it's, I love it, and I'm attached to it, and I want people to be able to heal from it. So, yeah.
So if you could, I guess, dictate where it goes, and dictate's not the right word I'm looking for, but if you could find the perfect place for it to reside, there we go. Maybe that's better. Where would you like it to end up at, to have that kind of impact on what you're just talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like it to travel, so it would be a traveling piece, I mean, there isn't one place unless there's a place where we could all gather, but it feels like if I say it should be in Missouri, then, people in New York won't be able to see it, and so that doesn't feel right. I feel like it should travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. And I wasn't expecting that. I not that I had any preconceived ideas where I think, oh, I know where she's going to put this. It was just like, I wasn't expecting that, but I think you're right on point that the fact that it could be a traveling piece that people can experience is really important. And then I wanted to make a comment on, that term that you just used a little bit, because when when you first start talking about looking back, I think my gut thing is thinking about nostalgia, right? You're looking back at your past and like, oh, that was so much fun, and I miss those days, and they were so much better. But I didn't really give, an idea to this looking back while you're moving forward, carrying everything that has happened before and, and carrying that forward, giving nod to the back, but still moving forward. I think that's such a beautiful way of thinking, and a powerful way of thinking, and a burdensome way of thinking, right? In the right context. And I'm so glad you spoke to that, because it gives me another way to think about different, whether it's art or just life in general.
Yeah. It's Sankofa. So it's an Adinkra. I mean, there's a symbol. There are Adinkra symbols from Ghana. for this particular symbol, there are two different ways that it's interpreted, right? So one symbol is, and probably the most appropriate symbol is an image of a bird, right? And the bird's body is facing forward, but the head is turned so that the beak is facing its back, and there's an egg on its back. So the beak is like connecting to the egg that's sitting on its back. So it's moving this way, but looking this way, right? And so it's that combination of like, I mean, yeah, there's a little nostalgia, but it's also remembering like what you've learned, and mistakes that you've made that you shouldn't make again. But it's also people that have come before you have done this, and so now you've got the new egg. You take the new egg, ancestor, new egg, you moving forward, right? And so it's this like progression of progress, where if you forget the past, then one, you don't know where you're going, because how do you know? But also you can't leave your people behind, right? And you also are not doing this alone. So all three of those.
Wow.
Which essentially, if you think about three, then we could talk all day long about the threes, and like it. So things are connected in ways that we don't acknowledge.
Yeah.
But that's Sankofa.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Once again, this is a great conversation, because it's making me think in different terms, and that I was not aware of, and totally makes sense, and gives me a little bit of insight to other things that I have to like step back and like reevaluate. Not heady things or whatever, but just, it's just really cool to like all of a sudden now I'm looking at things in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
This is a absolutely amazing piece. So it resides with you right now? It
is with me right now. I am actually waiting to find out if it's going to be in another show. Actually, 2 other shows. So it's resting right now. Yeah, and those shows would open in January, so it's a little bit of time.
And I see this someday in a museum somewhere. I know you'd like to see it travel, and that would be wonderful too, but I could see it residing in, I don't know. It's just, it's so powerful, and it's such a representation of the time that we're experiencing now. Hopefully things are going to improve, right? Are you optimistic that things are improving, or that things will improve? Or do you think it's not changing? It's definitely not changing as fast as it should. I got to ask you if you're optimistic about the future.
That's a good question. It's a tough question. I think that I want to be optimistic, but if I'm being honest, no, I don't think I am. And I think, I think there's a certain amount of, I'm jaded, and so it is hard to see like a thing, like it's hard to see something repeated over and over again, and have like that sort of PTSD, and just be angry about a thing, and be terrified of a thing, and lose people. It's hard to then hope, right? Because that like eats away at you, and I think that I have a niece and a nephew that I would like to not have to like live this way, right? With just like certain feelings going to the store, or certain reactions when you see someone on the street. Like those things I don't want for the younger generation, right? So I have hope for certain, I can't say that I have hope for like in society, right? Because I think that there are certain people who are who they are, and they believe what they believe. I think where I try to have hope is people who are affected, or who can affect. I hope that they continue to affect change. Like people like you continue to make changes, and you continue to, do what you're doing now, and like have conversations, and be open to having difficult conversations, right? So that's what I hope for you and people like you. And then for people who like myself or who are like darker skinned or like in a minority. I hope for them, not necessarily that the bad people will not be bad people anymore, because that's tackling it on the harder end of the thing. What I think I hope for is that there's more like resilience for the people who are suffering and like ways out for those people, because it's like, I don't know, the path of least resistance, I think. And I'm just like working through this right now. Right. So, but I think hoping to change something that is this far deemed unchangeable seems like an uphill battle, where if we can, like people like us, like we're having this conversation, if we can change and, you know, you change the people that you're able to change, and then I can like somehow have some kind of like mental health magic wand so that younger people that are going through what I'm going through don't have to suffer this way, then that feels safer and like a surer bet, or something that I have control over, for lack of another phrase, right? So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like super existential and like went down into this like deep dive of stuff. But like I said, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm in this space of like, what is the point of trying to, and you know, I don't want to be like pessimistic or like, I don't want to be the like, what is the point person? But if I'm not able to change this part of the equation, then why don't I change this part of the equation? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I have control over this part of the equation. I can't, I'm never going to convince a Nazi person to not be a Nazi. So how about I figure out how to not be around that, you know what I mean? So that kind of like conflict resolution-ish, that's what I hope for. Yeah. Now we're all just like, yeah, it's just like having like art podcast theory 101.
You know, but these are conversations that I love having, because just the discussion alone is worthwhile, right? Just to sit and listen to you talk about the struggles you're going through and how you're dealing with it through your art. I love these conversations, and you know, because it's easy for me to go to work, do my job, come home, watch TV, go to work, do my job, come home, watch TV, and you know, and then you're just never getting anything. Anyway, I think this is how we grow as a community, and to understand, because I can't walk in your shoes, but having the discussion definitely peels away the blinders in your eyes, right? It opens it up, and, you know, never to say that I can see the world through your eyes, because I can't, but it definitely helps to understand, and what can I do to make a difference in your life or somebody else's life, you know?
Yeah. I think, yeah. And all you have to do is know that there are other eyes through which a thing is being seen, like in the least, right? And so that, and even this, like you said, like this conversation will just change like a split second in your mind where you're going to say this or you're going to say that. And then in that split second, you have all of these conversations, right? That like roll through your mind. You're like, oh, that was like, that would totally be inappropriate. So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say this. Right. And then you do that times 500 million, and now we're better.
Right.
Right. So, but we have to start here. I don't, you know, I can't talk to 500 million people. I don't want to. So, yeah. But like you said, I mean, and it's good to just like have these conversations with different people, I think, because it's one thing to have to like think about what I think, or to have a conversation with someone who we know what each other think. We know how we think. So we're not even going to have this conversation because we agree already. But to say this to someone who I just met, and to like hear myself articulate my own ideas, like even that is progress, right? Because I don't, you know, it's abstract until I say it out loud to someone else. And I'm like, oh, I actually do think that way.
Yeah.
Because I said it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes on a whole different deal when you actually verbalize it, right? Instead of it just like, you know, these thoughts in your head all the time. And So thank you for sharing. And, what these conversations do for me is that, like Wes said, it takes off the blinders, and I definitely have been more cognizant of the other people's experiences, because if it doesn't affect you directly, I think it's human nature that you just don't even process it or even think about it, right? Like you're not engaged with it whatsoever. You actually have to engage with somebody else that has a different experience to even have any kind of change, like you said. And that dialogue is important. And if there is going to be any kind of change, that has to happen.
I think that actually makes me think about your question of if I think I'm an empath. And I still don't. So same answer, but also I want to add to that I think the difference is knowing how to put myself in other people's shoes and like imagine what they may feel like. Like, see if I see, someone who's on the street and they look hungry, I can imagine what I might feel like if I was that person. I think that's the difference that I want that makes more sense. So I don't necessarily feel what they're feeling, but I can totally imagine it. Yeah. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, put yourself and imagine what that person's existence is like, right? It just that experience. Like, I don't have to worry about being cold tonight because I don't have someplace to go, that I have to be out in the open somewhere or not have enough clothing or be hungry, any of those things. And that's something that, happens every day in this, all across America and all over the world. But, in Denver, we have, what was the terminology that Peter was using the other day? I don't want to use the homeless terminology.
Oh, I can't remember now.
Was it houseless?
Unhoused.
Unhoused. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
unhoused.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not unhoused, and I haven't had that experience, but putting yourself in those people's shoes, that's tough. And there's tons of people that are unhoused right now, and not just, they always want to go to the person that has either some kind of mental issue or substance abuse problem or whatever, but that's not always the case. That's just painting with a really broad brush. I mean, there's families that are unhoused and people that are working jobs that are unhoused, and they all have, the same needs. They want to be accepted, and that's something that this artist that we just talked to was talking about, like his interaction with somebody, this unhoused man, at the end of their conversation. And he said, this guy was kind of not exactly on the existing in the here and now per se, but he had the realization at the end of that conversation, this unhoused man thanked him for stopping and talking with him. Like, that made a difference in that guy's world. I mean, that's pretty doggone powerful. He's like, people don't talk to me. I don't have conversations with people. I can't imagine existing in this world and just people don't see you, or they see you one way, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not unhoused people. It's people of color, indigenous people. I mean, it runs the whole gamut of people that have other experiences. And we need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I think it's, to your point, it's hard if you haven't experienced it, though, and yeah.
I think where people go a lot of times is that, like I said, unless they've experienced it firsthand, they don't process it, or they don't even think about it. But you got to be open to the fact that just because you haven't experienced it, that doesn't mean other people aren't there dealing with this day in and day out. And you need to stop and think about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about one more piece here, and then we'll start to wrap things up. Talk about that piece, if you would.
Yeah, it's called Necessary Beings. And so, again, another a piece that was born out of the readings of Octavia Butler. The pieces that kind of curve up are the outliers, right? And so you have all these pieces that are kind of like in line, following this repetitive pattern. And then you have the three that are like trying to merge out of this like normal, mundane kind of existence. And it's those necessary beings that are like trying to make change and trying to like deviate from the boring normal. And that's how it has felt for me to be really kind of like in my body and be an artist and be a creator. Like it's always felt like, I don't want to say that I'm like a nonconformist, because that feels anti, or it feels like a response, right? But I do feel like I'm a divergent person. So I tend to kind of just like do my thing. Like I'm usually over here when everyone's over here and they're like in these lanes and they're following people and they're like long lines of queued up, people doing things. I tend to be more interested in what's happening over here. Right. And so that's what these three pieces are kind of like, again, back to the three and like the triad and the trio of the things. That's me kind of trying to merge out of the like repetitive normal.
I love it. This is definitely one of my favorite pieces of yours for sure.
Yeah.
And I heard you in one of your talks that you've given, you said that every single one of these pieces are self-portraits.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
How do you go about, this really is like fine art, and some of these pieces you would need a large space to display them. How do you go about selling your art and making money with your art? Are you selling pieces in galleries? Are you people find you on social media and reaching out to you and either commissioning you or buying pieces that they've seen? How does that work?
I'm actually still learning. I don't, just like full disclosure, I don't actually sell a lot of work. So, the money that I earn putting into making the work was from my day job. Right. So, I don't want to take like the romance out of it, but yeah, I don't actually sell a ton of work. And so that's the part of, I guess, the business end that, I could learn from. And I'm not sure why at this point. I mean, my prices are probably a little high for my current audience. And I think it also, I'm still actually looking for my audience too. And I think that has a lot to do with it. The gentleman that I sold the most recent piece to, he is actually from New York. Right. And so that's actually really telling about the receipt of my work. And I think that like people like it and it's well received, but it's not like people aren't buying it. And so I think, I'm still figuring it out, to be like quite frank with you. I've sold some smaller pieces, and some jewelry that's very similar. Like I make jewelry. But the larger pieces, I think that there probably is a combination of a bunch of factors. Like it's one, not easy to sell sculpture, right? To your typical person who buys work, because where do you put it? And then also it's just harder to buy because it's expensive. So there's that. Yeah, that's my answer to that question. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm still trying to figure out what I think about gallery representation, and if it's right for me. And I don't know yet. I don't know if that's the world that I want to go into. And so I'm researching that and kind of thinking through like what I want for my work and like where I want it to go and where I want to show it, right? Do I want it in a gallery? And it's, nothing, it's nothing against people who are in galleries. It's just like, I don't know what I want yet. Right. So.
Yeah. And we've talked to people that, like totally anti-gallery and, and then there's other ones that, when they find the right gallery that actually works for them, it can really pay off in dividends. So, you'll figure it out and you'll figure out what's the best way for you. And I think it's just a matter of time too. Some of it is just, being out there long enough and getting the notoriety in a sense, not in fame, but in, what work you're doing and, getting people to see it.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt your work is beautiful, and listening to you talk about it and what it means to you making it, it just even makes it more powerful, more beautiful. So it's only a matter of time.
Thank you.
Yeah. And,
we talk about time and, when is appropriate all the time. Right. So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot to learn. Right. And there's stuff that I know. Right. And then there's stuff that I'm just like, oh my God, I'm deer in headlights right now, so.
Yeah. And I think the other kind of weird it's kind of a mantra thing. When the universe is right and you need something, that teacher will show up, that mentor will show up. And I truly believe that, because there's been things that has happened in my life that is like, well, this just seems too weird. When I look back, is like, oh, that was so totally meant to happen. And, but in the moment you don't realize that, but.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's proof. So I'm a little nervous, but that nervousness is more, it comes from just like having had a set amount of, like having had a plan for the last however many years. And so now I am responsible for that plan, but also the rest of it, I'm not responsible for, because, the universe. Right. So, but I trust that things will happen. It's just that I don't know when. Right. And there's a little bit of like giving up control. And so it's a good fright. Good.
I know that you have a bunch of people, and I think Todd and I are one of those. We're gonna cheer for you. We're gonna root you on. We're gonna want to see you succeed and be, and watch you through this. This isn't a one-time thing. We invest in the people we talk to in a sense that we love their work. And Todd is right. He wouldn't have you on this podcast if he didn't love it. And we talk about it, and we talked about it at Redline. And, he told me the story about him seeing you the other day, and, he was to the moon about it, so you got a lot of support, and that, and, we're here for you.
Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. It's like, I have to say Todd, because right now I see Wes, I see your face. So it's like, like I'm doing the interpersonal skills where I look across the room. And now I also acknowledge you, Todd. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Yeah. Now you're back. Now you're on my screen.
Oh, you have the speaker view.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so you should put it in the gallery view. Then you can see all of us.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's all right. I mean, you've lasted this long with the speaker
3 hours
view.
later. Yeah.
I thought about that. I just assume everybody does gallery view. That's all right. Thanks for speaking up, Todd. So you showed up.
I kind of like to be a wallflower, to be honest with you. But as we wrap this up, talk about what you have coming up. What kind of exhibitions you're a part of, and what things people can look forward to come see outside of a First Friday.
Yeah, December, I'll be in another show at Bit Factory. That's women's equality exhibition. So that's a group show. And then January, I'm hoping to be busy. There are 2 shows I think I mentioned that I'm still waiting for a notification about. So one will be at the Arvada Center, which we love, yay. And then the other show will be in Chicago. So I'm hopeful for those. And then January, if my large install project is a go, then that will be up in January. So we'll do a big opening and like celebration. That'll be pretty big.
Fantastic. Any other questions that you have for?
I got one question that I haven't asked in a while. So, and I think this is a good question for her is, what does it mean to be bold as an artist?
I mean, I feel like we've been talking about this, right? I think it means to like live your truth and to stay in your truth no matter what. I mean, there's a lot of, I feel like I'm like a 60-year-old person talking about like, how to be a person, but there's a lot of adversity in life. Like we all know that, right? But that also applies to trying to be an artist. And there are people that will try to convince you to do, the commodified thing. And I think it's bold to do the thing that you believe in and not necessarily for the money, or not to do the thing because someone promises like this will be better if you just this. So to just like stay in your truth, that's boldness.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
This has been such a wonderful few hours. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you're busy. I know, just like every artist, there's always something you could be doing. So, the fact that you took time with us this evening, that means the world to Wes and I. And, time is the most precious thing we have. And so I thank you for giving of yourself and your time to us. That was really wonderful. I love your work. It's absolutely, absolutely stunning. And I love you. I'm glad we've connected. You're beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Because I need this too, and so you're welcome. And thank you. Anytime, we'll do this all day long. Yeah, I'm fans of yours. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I love this discussion. And yeah, Todd is right. We love what you're doing. We love you. I think you're on the right path, and I'm glad you're holding true to it. And we'll cheer you along. Yeah. I can't wait to spend an afternoon with you and just talk and see your work in person and spend some time with you. So, but I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us tonight. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And again, thank you. It really was my pleasure. And I didn't get to meet your dog, Todd, but I saw it running in the back there.
That was Petey.
Petey. Okay.
Petey. Well, I'll introduce you to him sometime. He's a great dog. He's a wonderful dog. Okay. Best dog I ever had.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Hands down. Really intelligent. Probably too intelligent, actually. Yeah. Again, check out Autumn's work on her website, atthomas.com, and her Instagram @seasonsofautumn. And for the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.